By the time summer rolled around, my entire family's reputation was in ashes. My parents' respectable image was gone. My sister's online following vanished. And their lives were unraveling one headline at a time. And all of it started with one birthday party the night I realized the people I loved most would rather see my daughter humiliated than risk losing their gravy train. My name is Madison. I'm 33 years old, vice president of marketing for a Fortune 100 company in Boston, and the single mom everyone in my family counted on. If you've ever been the reliable one, the person who pays the bills, picks up the slack, and never gets any thanks, let me know where you're watching from. Because this story might feel a little too familiar. I spent my whole adult life trying to do the right thing. I worked my way through an Ivy League college on scholarships and late-night shifts, while my parents poured every spare dollar and all their attention into my little sister, Sloane. They called her their miracle baby, the one with the big personality and an even bigger sense of entitlement. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one who kept the lights on, both literally and figuratively. Looking back, I can see the pattern so clearly now. Every family emergency, I handled it. My parents' mortgage, their medical insurance, my nephew Grayson's tuition for that elite private school in Wellesley, all of it came out of my paycheck. My sister bounced from one failed wellness influencer scheme to another, but the family always cheered her on. When she maxed out her credit cards trying to launch a kombucha brand, I wrote the check. When my parents' roof leaked, I made the call and transferred the money before they even asked. For years, I told myself I was just helping, that this was what family did. Of course, I wasn't exactly quiet about my success, but I wasn't loud about it either. My world was busy and exhausting, with constant conference calls and never-ending deadlines. But at the end of the day, what mattered to me was Harper, my daughter. She's 16, whip-smart, kind, and more self-aware at her age than I was at 30. Harper is the reason I pushed through every burnout cycle, every family crisis, every time I thought about just walking away. We live in a leafy suburb outside Boston. Our house is comfortable, not flashy, but it's filled with light and laughter and stacks of Harper's books everywhere. I thought I'd finally built a safe place for her, a place where she could just be a kid, without the generational baggage that weighed me down. But even here, my family's needs had a way of creeping in. They called every Sunday. Sometimes it was just for a chat. Sometimes it was for a small favor that always ballooned into something more. Just until your dad's Social Security comes through. Grayson needs cleats for soccer. Sloane is struggling with her rent again. You know how it is. One request never stays small. And still, I paid. I always paid. It was Harper's sweet 16 that changed everything. 16 is a big deal in the States. It's the first time you feel like you're standing at the edge of adulthood. Your whole life opening up. I wanted to give Harper the kind of party I never had. Something just for her. Surrounded by friends, teachers, even her favorite English lit mentor. We rented a private room at the country club, strung up fairy lights, and splurged on a custom cake from the bakery she'd been dreaming about all year. I coordinated every detail down to the playlist she loved and the gluten-free options for her best friend. The guest list grew. Of course, Sloane insisted on coming, dragging Grayson and a camera crew for her social channels. My parents RSVP'd yes before I could finish the invitation. Harper, nervous but excited, spent a week agonizing over her dress and texting me screenshots of shoes. We laughed about it in the car. Her playlist on shuffle. Both of us pretending not to care about who might show up from her class, or if her longtime crush, Ethan, would be brave enough to attend. I should have seen it coming. I really should have. Because with my family, there's always a catch. Always a punchline waiting in the wings. But on that night, I was just a mom hoping this party would be one of those rare, perfect memories that Harper could look back on and feel proud. I didn't know this would be the night everything in our family would shatter. I didn't know that what happened next would turn a simple birthday party into a scandal that would make the news, unravel decades of secrets, and force me to choose between saving myself and staying loyal to the people who raised me. And what my family didn't know, not yet, was that this time, I was done paying for their mistakes. Looking back now, it's almost embarrassing how long I played the part of the family fixer. But when you're raised to believe love is something you earn through usefulness, you don't really question the role, you just fill it. Growing up, it was always obvious where the spotlight landed. My little sister, Sloane, could do no wrong. She was the family's golden child, soaking up attention like sunlight and somehow making every room spin around her. Our parents said she was spirited and creative, which is code for she's a handful, but we'll never hold her accountable. I was the opposite, the reliable one, the peacemaker. If a science project was due, I stayed up helping her glue the volcano together. When her ballet shoes disappeared before a recital, I skipped my own study group to find them. Even as a kid, I was always on call. That pattern didn't fade with age, it just changed flavor. Sloane went to a private college out west for 2 years before dropping out to pursue her passions. My parents bailed her out of every failed venture, and when the money ran out, they turned to me. I was 22, barely making it through grad school, juggling internships, barista shifts, and a full course load. It didn't matter. When Sloane needed rent for her Los Angeles apartment, the family group chat lit up. When she pivoted to wellness influencing and maxed out her credit cards, my parents forwarded me her GoFundMe, and I was expected to top it off. I always did. Not because I was rich back then. I was far from it, but because the alternative was endless guilt. I'd get calls from my mother, her voice trembling just enough to trigger old habits. "We know you're busy." "Honey, but Sloane's really struggling this month." Dad would chime in with, "You're the responsible one. We're so proud of you." That pride always felt double-edged. If I ever hesitated, my phone would buzz with reminders of everything my family had sacrificed for me. College was my achievement, but it was always framed as a burden they had quietly carried. Never mind the reality that my scholarships and late shifts paid most of the bills. The truth is, my parents had a knack for rewriting history. At every family dinner, they'd tell the story of how Sloane had been born sickly and how all their attention, all their resources, went into keeping her healthy. I grew up learning that my own needs were manageable, that I was easy, and that being easy meant getting less. Fast forward to adulthood, and the stakes just got higher. My career took off in Boston, and within a decade, I was making more money than both my parents ever had. At first, it felt good finally. I was in a position to give back. I put a down payment on my parents' dream house when their old place flooded. When Dad's retirement plan cratered, I picked up the slack on his medical insurance. Harper was still in elementary school then, and I convinced myself I was just being a good daughter, giving my child the family stability I'd wanted for myself. But the requests kept coming. Sloane's passion projects burned through cash at an astonishing rate. There was the juice bar in Santa Monica that never opened, the eco-friendly athleisure line that fizzled before launch, the podcast equipment she bought and abandoned after 3 episodes. My parents always found a reason to justify it. She just needs one more chance. It's important to support her dreams. Meanwhile, I started to realize that nobody in the family ever offered me help. Not with Harper, not with my work, not even when I got pneumonia and ran out of sick days. I was the safety net and the ATM, invisible until a crisis appeared. Still, I kept going. Because that's what responsible people do. Right. You pull yourself up. You send the money. You swallow the resentment and tell yourself that next time, you'll draw the line. Except there's always a new emergency. When my parents' property taxes spiked, I paid the difference. When Grayson's school wanted a donation for their new sports facility, my checkbook came out. When Sloane's rent doubled and she called in tears, I transferred the money without thinking. She always said she'd pay me back. But somehow, her promises evaporated in the group chat the minute her crisis was solved. There were moments of clarity flickers when I'd see the imbalance for what it was. The way Sloane's wins were celebrated, even when she failed. The way my achievements became background noise. Proof only of how reliable I'd always been. It's strange how family dynamics can warp your sense of self. The more I gave, the more they expected, and the less they seemed to see me as a person at all. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't bleed into my relationship with Harper. I tried so hard to protect her from that dynamic, to let her be a kid. But the truth is, when you're stretched thin, the cracks always show. There were nights I'd come home late, exhausted from work and another round of family emergencies, and find her quietly waiting up to show me a poem she'd written or a sketch she'd made. I never wanted her to see me resentful, never wanted her to feel like love came with a price tag. Looking back, I think the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the feeling of being alone, even surrounded by family. The quiet, gnawing realization that if I ever really needed them, no one would come running. The only time I truly felt seen was when I was solving someone else's problem. That's the context, the pattern that built up over decades. Leading straight to the night, everything finally snapped. It wasn't just about a birthday party. It was about every line I'd let them cross. Every time I put myself last. Every moment I thought love could be earned by giving just a little bit more. And with Harper's Sweet 16 on the horizon, I had no idea that the biggest betrayal of all was waiting for us. The party was supposed to be a celebration, a fresh start. But as the guest list grew and my family circled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that the old pattern was about to play out in a way I'd never seen before. I started noticing little things in the weeks leading up to Harper's party. Unusual charges, offhand comments, Sloane acting strangely secretive. At the time, I thought I was just being paranoid. But sometimes, it's not paranoia at all. Sometimes, it's the beginning of the truth. The weeks before Harper's party felt like living inside a storm cloud that no one else seemed to notice. At first, it was just small things. My Venmo notifications pinged at odd hours. Sometimes for amounts I didn't remember sending $200 here, $75 there, always to Sloane. Or sometimes to Grayson's school with a note I never wrote. When I checked the bank statements, I told myself I must have forgotten a request. I'd been so busy lately. It was easy to believe. But then the requests got stranger. Sloane texted me late one night, asking if I could front her some cash for a deposit she'd already promised her landlord. I asked her why she was short again, and she dodged the question, replying with a string of heart emojis and a picture of her latest smoothie bowl for Instagram. My mom called the next morning, voice syrupy sweet, gushing about how excited she was for Harper's Sweet 16. "It's so nice of you to make it special for her," she said. Then casually added, "Let us know if you need help with the guest list. Sloane's got some fun ideas for content." That word, content, landed wrong. I brushed it off. There was an uneasiness I couldn't shake, but it was hard to pin down. Sloane had been going live more than usual, talking up big plans to her followers. But every time I asked what she meant, she deflected. "Don't worry, Maddie. It's all under control." Even Grayson seemed on edge. He stopped by the house to pick up his soccer gear and barely made eye contact. When I asked if everything was okay, he just mumbled, "Mom's stressed," and changed the subject. My only real confidant in the family, my Aunt Beth, called one evening as I was sorting receipts at the kitchen table. She's never been one to meddle, but her voice was serious. "Madison, your heart's in the right place, but your folks are asking a lot. Sloan, she's stirring something up. Don't let them rope you into any more favors this month." Okay. I promised her I'd keep my guard up. But deep down, I doubted myself. It's hard to believe the worst of people you've spent your life rescuing. As the party drew closer, my suspicion only grew. I caught Sloan whispering with my mom in the backyard, their voices dropping whenever I walked by. I found a half-finished list of TikTok hashtags scribbled on a napkin after dinner. Sloan posted teaser clips online, just quick shots of country club decorations, but each one tagged with phrases like "family drama incoming" and "don't miss the live stream." I asked her about it, and she laughed, saying, "Just drumming up excitement. You want this party to be legendary?" Right. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just overreacting. After all, Harper was thrilled her friends were buzzing. Her dress was perfect, and her favorite teacher even agreed to stop by. But in the days leading up to the event, the requests for small extras exploded. Sloan wanted a special cake for content. My mom insisted on renting a professional sound system, just in case. When I pushed back, she got offended, muttering, "You never want to do anything fun." Still, I paid. I always paid. The day of the party, everything looked flawless on the surface. The country club sparkled under fairy lights. Harper glowed with anticipation, bouncing between her friends and the dessert table. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. I forced myself to relax. Maybe, for once, things would go smoothly. I should have trusted my instincts. It started with Sloan setting up her phone on a tripod right in the middle of the room. She announced to the guests that the party would be streamed for family out of state. No one questioned it. The music was playing. Kids were laughing, and I let myself believe, for half an hour, that all my fears were for nothing. Then came the moment Harper had been waiting for: the candles, the cake, everyone singing. I watched her take it all in, eyes sparkling. Just as she leaned forward to blow out the candles, my mother's voice rang out, far too loud, slicing through the celebration. "All right, sweetheart, make a wish," she said, her smile too wide, her voice syrupy. "But maybe skip the cake. You're looking a little wide these days. No use wishing to slim down if you're having seconds." For a split second, time froze. Then laughter rippled across the room. Sloane's the loudest, followed by my father. And then, worst of all, a few of Harper's friends, and even her crush, Ethan. I caught it all in real time, and again, a second later, on Sloane's live stream, as the comments rolled in laughing emojis, fat jokes, hashtags, I saw Harper's face crumble. She stood up so quickly her chair screeched, and she fled the room, cheeks burning, eyes brimming with tears. I stood there frozen, still holding my phone, still filming, as the room's energy drained away. For a heartbeat, I prayed someone would say something, anything, but no one did. My parents just shrugged. Sloan flashed her ring light smile. A few kids muttered under their breath, and the party unraveled. I excused myself and found Harper in the hallway, curled up, shaking, trying not to cry. She managed to whisper, "Why would Grandma say that? Was it because of me?" It broke me. I told her it had nothing to do with her, that none of it was true. But in that moment, I realized it wasn't just about one cruel comment. This was the culmination of every sacrifice, every overlooked slight, every time I'd ignored my own boundaries for the sake of peace. It didn't matter how perfect I made the party or how much I paid for the day. My family had found a way to make Harper feel small, and me feel powerless, in front of everyone who mattered to us. That was the moment my suspicion turned to certainty. I saw the comments flooding in on Sloane's feed. The way my mother reveled in the laughter. How quickly Sloane's phone picked up hundreds of new viewers. The evidence wasn't just emotional, it was digital. Time-stamped. And public. My own money had funded my daughter's humiliation, and my family was collecting likes for it. Something snapped. Suddenly, I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. This wasn't just family dysfunction. This was exploitation, and I was done being the one who made it possible. That night, as the dust settled and the lights went out, I started pulling every thread I could find. I needed answers. And more than that, I needed the truth. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And this time, I was ready to follow it all the way to the end. That night, after the last guest had left, and the house was finally quiet, I sat at the kitchen table, unable to sleep, replaying every second of Harper's party in my mind. The humiliation wasn't just an accident. I could see now how deliberate it was, how planned, how performative. The pain wasn't new, but the public spectacle was. That was the line. I scrolled through my phone, searching for anything that could explain why my own mother would do that to her granddaughter, why Sloane seemed to relish the attention, and why it ignored so many warning signs. The live stream was still up, racking up views and comments. Sloane had tagged it with family realness and no filter needed. It wasn't just a party. It was content. I watched the clip again, forcing myself not to look away. My mother's words, Sloane's laughter, Harper's devastation, all packaged and sent out to the world for entertainment. At first, I thought this was just about my mother being tone deaf and Sloane being desperate for online validation. But as I kept digging, the conspiracy revealed itself. There were screenshots, Sloane's group texts with her friends, plotting how to make the party go viral. We need a shocking moment, something real. One message read, another, Mom can say something wild, and I'll get it on camera. My mother agreed. Writing, if it helps Sloane's numbers, I'll play the villain. Harper will bounce back. It was all right there. They'd scripted the moment that crushed Harper for clicks and clout, trading her dignity for Sloane's fleeting shot at influencer fame. The hashtags, the staged reactions, the fake apologies that came later. Every detail was rehearsed. And my money, my effort, my trust had paid for all of it. But that wasn't the end. The deeper I went, the more I saw that this night wasn't an isolated betrayal. It was the latest chapter in a pattern that had started long before Harper was born. There were emails from years ago. My parents strategizing about how to approach me for just a little help every time Sloane was in a jam. I found an old message from my father, explaining, Madison doesn't need much. She's a survivor. Sloane is the one we have to look out for. My mother replied, she'll always pay. She always does. Suddenly, every family emergency, every guilt trip, every small favor took on new meaning. I could see the timeline stretching back through my childhood. The times I'd been overlooked. The celebrations that became backdrops for Sloane's drama. The moments my own milestones were brushed aside because her needs were bigger, louder, more urgent. I wasn't just the reliable one. I was the designated scapegoat, expected to absorb every disappointment and bankroll everyone else's dreams. It felt like a sensory overload, my mind spinning, my skin prickling with the sting of realization. I remembered the look on Harper's face when she ran from the room, how the bright lights and glittering decorations suddenly felt sharp and empty. The cake, barely touched, the music fading out, the laughter lingering like poison. For years, I'd convinced myself that love and obligation were the same. Now I saw the truth. I'd been cast in a role I never auditioned for. And the script was always stacked against me. It wasn't just about Harper anymore. It was about breaking a cycle that had started long before either of us could fight back. The evidence was everywhere. Now text messages, banking records, live streams, even my own reflection. There was no more room for excuses or half measures. For the first time, I stopped asking what I could do to fix my family. Instead, I started asking how I could finally save myself and protect my daughter. That was the moment everything changed. I realized I didn't have to keep paying the price for other people's choices. I could draw the line. And this time, I would not step back. That morning, something inside me felt different, like a switch had flipped. The sadness was still there. Sure, but the helplessness was gone. In its place was a steady, cold clarity. I'd always believed in giving people second chances, especially family. But this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was about protecting Harper. And finally, myself. I started with the basics. I went through my banking app, scrolling line by line through every payment, every loan, every recurring withdrawal that had become invisible over time. I screenshotted each transaction: mortgage transfers, private school donations, wire payments to Sloan's endless projects. I kept meticulous notes, labeling each one with the date, the reason, and who had made the request. I found dozens of old text messages, voice notes, even emails where my parents or Sloan had promised, "We'll pay you back soon." None of those promises had ever been kept. Next, I gathered digital evidence. I saved Sloan's live stream, downloaded every video, screenshot the comments section, and archived the group texts where they had plotted the party's viral moment. The hashtags, the staged lines, the sickening pride my mother showed in playing the villain. It was all documented. I even dug into social media and found DMs between Sloan and her influencer friends, bragging about how family drama always gets views. Every detail painted a crystal clear picture of intentional, premeditated exploitation. But I didn't just collect evidence. I started making calls. The first was to my lawyer. I laid out the pattern of financial abuse, provided every document, every screenshot, every traceable dollar. He listened carefully, then told me I had a much stronger case than I realized, not just for ending support, but for recovering funds and pursuing damages if I wanted to go that far. He suggested we freeze any further automatic transfers immediately and draft formal letters terminating all financial obligations. Next, I reached out to the bank and revoked every single authorization tied to my accounts. Mortgage support, gone. College savings transfers for Grayson, canceled. Sloan's name on any shared credit lines, removed. I notified the private school, explained that future tuition payments for Grayson would need to come from his actual guardians. The sense of control returned, bit by bit. With every call, I didn't stop there. I called the insurance agent and pulled my name from my parents' supplemental plans. I spoke with the car dealership and started the process of repossessing the Mercedes SUV I'd bought for them last Christmas. That car, which had once been a symbol of generosity, now became a simple legal asset, one I could reclaim. At the same time, I reached out quietly to Harper's school counselor. I explained what had happened, not every humiliating detail, but enough for them to understand why Harper might seem withdrawn, or why certain kids might be repeating hurtful things they saw online. I wanted the school on our side, ready to support her if things got ugly. All of this happened with a kind of quiet precision I'd never allowed myself before. There was no screaming, no late-night arguments, no drawn-out texts, just firm, clear boundaries, delivered through legal channels and business-like emails. I knew my family would react badly. The first wave came within hours. Sloan texted, furious that I'd embarrassed her by pulling out of her brand sponsorships brand deals. By the way, that I had quietly subsidized behind the scenes. My mother left a voicemail, her tone swinging from weepy to scolding in a single breath. You can't just cut us off like this. Madison, we're family. Don't you care what people will think? My father sent a curt email, accusing me of airing private business and warning me that I was making things worse. But I was prepared for all of it. For once, I didn't engage. I forwarded the messages to my attorney. Let my legal team handle the responses, and blocked their numbers from my personal phone. I even posted a brief, dignified statement on social media, no details. Just a simple line. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. Sometimes, it's the only way to protect what matters most. The power dynamic had shifted. Every day, I felt it more, the freedom that comes with no longer being the family ATM. The relief of knowing Harper would never have to pay for their mistakes. With every step, I reclaimed not just my finances, but my peace of mind. For the first time in years, my world was quiet. No buzzing phone, no endless requests, no pressure to solve crises that weren't mine. But I knew it wasn't over yet. My family had built their lives on my compliance, and the fallout would be immediate and public. The first real consequence landed within a week. My parents called in a panic. They'd received a letter from the bank about the mortgage, and their car was missing from the driveway. Sloan blew up my phone, livid about her eviction notice and the sponsorship deals drying up overnight. They had lived so long, assuming I'd always rescue them. It never occurred to them what would happen if I truly walked away. The fallout spread fast. The school called a meeting with my parents about Grayson's tuition and their unpaid donation pledge. My parents showed up red-faced and furious, but the staff was unmoved. They'd already seen the public statements, knew the story was bigger than a single family. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about accountability. At work, Sloan's influencer reputation tanked. The live stream of Harper's party, once meant to go viral for clout, had backfired spectacularly. People screen-recorded the fat-shaming and posted it across TikTok and Instagram with captions like, "When your own family is the bully." Sloan's follower count nosedived. Brands pulled their partnerships, and she found herself blocked by PR contacts she'd counted as friends. No apology video could fix the damage. Meanwhile, my parents, so proud of their community leader image, found themselves at the center of the kind of small-town scandal you can't buy your way out of. Neighbors whispered. Old friends stopped calling. Their social club invitations dried up. For the first time, the people who had enabled and excused their behavior were seeing the truth. My inbox filled with messages from other parents and even school staff, expressing support for Harper and calling out what they'd witnessed at the party. The story had struck a nerve. It wasn't just about one girl's birthday. It was about every kid who'd ever been shamed by the people who should protect them. The outpouring of support made Harper feel seen again. Slowly, she began to hold her head higher, realizing she wasn't alone. My family, predictably, didn't take responsibility. Sloan accused me of ruining her life. My mother sent guilt-laced emails about tearing the family apart. My father called my actions vindictive and warned that no one will stand by you. But the old shame didn't stick anymore. I saw their attempts at reconciliation for what they were, just another way to drag me back into the cycle. This time, I refused. I maintained my dignity. I didn't argue in public, didn't post the receipts or the private messages, even when others urged me to expose more. Instead, I let the truth speak for itself. Every boundary I set was enforced through legal channels. Every conversation was brief and professional. There were no shouting matches, no pleas for understanding, The aftermath was quiet in my own home, almost peaceful. Harper and I leaned on each other, found support in our chosen friends, and let the storm pass outside. I started sleeping better. The tension that had lived in my shoulders for years began to melt away. Every now and then, I would get a message from an old family friend, someone quietly cheering me on, or from a parent who had been through something similar, thanking me for standing up. What surprised me most was how quickly the world adjusted. The people who mattered showed up, and the ones who never really cared faded into the background. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. There were no dramatic reunions, no last-minute apologies. My family was left to face the consequences of their choices, both public and private. I had spent years holding us all together, but now I was done carrying the weight of their mistakes. And as the dust settled, I realized the only thing I regretted was not setting these boundaries sooner. It's been nearly a year since that night, and our lives are quieter, simpler, in the best possible way. Some days I still feel echoes of the chaos, like a distant storm rolling far away. But most mornings I wake up and feel light for the first time in decades. Harper laughs more now. She's become stronger, not in spite of what happened, but maybe even because of it. I've watched her grow into someone who understands her worth isn't tied to anyone else's approval. That, more than anything, makes every hard choice worth it. We've built something new together, a life filled with people who show up, who listen, who choose kindness without keeping score. Friends have become family. The neighbors who rallied around Harper have turned into a support system I never knew we needed. Holidays aren't tense performances anymore. They're honest, sometimes messy, but always real. The pressure to be perfect is gone. The only people at our table now are the ones who make us feel safe. At work, I found the confidence to take risks I used to avoid. I spoke up for myself, advocated for my team, and earned a promotion I'd once assumed would always go to someone louder. My career isn't my whole life, but it's finally mine, built on my own terms. And every win feels sweeter because it wasn't taken for granted or twisted into another family obligation. Occasionally, a memory will surface, a birthday gone wrong, a snide comment, an email laced with guilt, and for a moment, the old sadness flickers. But I remind myself those are just shadows. They can't hurt us anymore. Harper and I still talk about what happened, especially when she has a hard day at school or sees something online that reminds her of the past. I tell her what I wish someone had told me at 16. Your boundaries are a gift, not a crime. You have the right to walk away from anyone who asks you to shrink yourself for their comfort. If you're listening and you've ever had to make the impossible choice, family or sanity, peace or old patterns, I want you to know you're not alone. I used to believe loyalty meant sacrificing everything for people who never truly saw me. Now I know that loving yourself and protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family for your own well-being? I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, because someone else out there probably needs to know they're not the only one. And if you found a piece of yourself in this story, hit subscribe. There's a whole community here that understands what it means to choose yourself. Because sometimes, the family you build is so much better than the one you were born into.